Hello, Americans, YouTuber Anthony Wall. I was next to the World Trade Center the morning of the World Trade Center towers. They were attacked right before it, and I left right before it. I was in the court next to it as an observer, and I was the night before a hotel next to it, and I noticed things. And the news attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about that to hide those things as timed collusions with the other countries involved and with our own. And that's all those countries. They have been shared here on and off campuses longer than our founders were born. There was a breaching method that they declassified about how it was entrenched and how it was measuring and maintaining what everyone said. Collusion /S against everyone else and against themselves to an extent, or they were sensed, but not just through the internationally monitored conversations, which also played roles even with slavery entrenched. And the reason we haven't countered that properly is because it was the same way it was left entrenched here, other than our founders described, is pretended for our founders. How that's gotten away with is by pretending, for example, that they don't realize that our founders declassify and directions to us not to allow anyone to be referred to as our plural founders besides James Madison and the unknown founders that we know existed, because they had to be used to counter extort people at key locations to force them part of the to counter an extent of torture, extortion, and slavery against every human body, to use remotely, not just this landscape, from abroad, because it was already using them from abroad, because it's a method that got countries A through Z that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states. It made them counter sustain things upon themselves, specifically have them counter it improperly, fact treatment nature-wise, there and physically. And then to have that countered properly, but improperly leaving out the breaching methods roles with it, and simultaneous with use /S of it as the method that had, before America's founders were born, more than 13 colonies entrenched, even with slavery rules only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies. The same breaching method that had been and still is Native American difference against Native American difference. Still is cruel and unjust punishment. And everything there, in other words, we have people that were speaking on crimes that came through campuses that had this replaced with James. That's why James Madison, in other words, there were plural unknown founders, and they counter extorted everyone. That's what the Declaration of Independence was about. That's why and how they left slavery, entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. One doesn't vote on that and pretend that they could speak for the Constitution unabridged, speak for what our founders declassified. James Madison, then, once he was also a president /chief, which is distinct from founder, he still didn't have free speech. It's not because kids didn't do their homework. And a lot of kids didn't do their homework because it does not correlate with nature, hyper-additionally, for reasons hyper-additional, but also hyper-singular, at campuses A through Z, relative to all homeschooling. This is a use of location /S everywhere the human species body has one. Hyper-criminally foreign influence, per the method, where at least we could observe it, was entrenched. And who denies it will have inherent to, active to, progressive to, their logic, their nature of logic. Demonstration /S of the same thing. The only reason this hasn't surfaced and education hasn't healed itself, the reason generating all the plural ones is the breaching method. slash S, to hide behind the plural part and the standing nature of criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, therefore difference slash S treatments, and exceptions in exception nature, increasingly valued and being and having been valued. So, where there's an identity theft, fraud, slander method against every human being, every human difference, every human name, therefore. This is part of the reason why we have black people's whites of eyes in nature communicating, showing us things. That means they're anything to us. Sharks have black people's whites of eyes. We are shown that there are two eyes that fish have, that birds have. Apparently, bugs too. It's hard to observe them close. I have to see on YouTube somewhere. They'll have. It doesn't look like when we see pictures of ants. But so in other words, there are two sexes. There are grouped differences, a part of the human species body of individual body system. And we had these things shown to us when we were kids. But individually grouped and together, all differences have been used as syntax systems, tactical ulterior from how nature communicates. We are individuals, grouped with group differences that we are shown. Other species bodies have male, female, and ours, but that's where we are simultaneously shown that it is per what is not us nor them, but it is all things anyway. It is three distinct identities of relationship to itself that are increasingly gaining as value, as volume, as a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. Language is about the invisible but still discernible slash hyper invisible but still discernible. The parts of speech of English grammar and of the ancient languages, they were revealed to be taught this way. And many pray, not just for natural reasons any longer, but for a reason slash S, relative to our needs to understand to simultaneously at countries A through Z together at the same time, the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive or hyper-criminally foreign influenced natures of positive and negative treatments, self-valued right, where, and how nobody self-values such. And where, and how everyone's used already. Subject treatments, leaving out and valuing and having self-value. Fake things being and having been put into databases. And bodies that are the only ones that are allowed to counter crimes. As collusions through predicate acts with facts method slash S. And having been child abused by the same method that has names like there's a Harris family and there's a DeMora family and there's there are other people from other areas that planted roles, collusions with organized crimes on my street in the form of federal evidences crimes with interbranch and foreign intelligence and interbranch. Overt criminal enterprises, plural, private ones. Now, see, when this is what we all long to speak about. Like we have black people's whites of eyes. We know that all these identities of jobs and titles they jump in, or they say, oh, lobbyists. In other words, even if that's true, they're using it just follow mandated law. Lobbyists aren't allowed to block mandated law. See, this hyper foreign act countries A through Z. It measures and maintains self-value collusion slash that's where and how it showed people how to appreciate the sciences and distinctions individually grouped in together. Tactical ulterior from how nature showed and shows us to. specifically to have nature demonstrate that as collusion / S that were then. And right where and how. It's the reason this has gotten away with. Why, how anyone gets away with pretending that they have honest reason regarding how the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. They're only allowed to unfold the way they did. The suburbs, tactically denatured to cause a negative value nature progressions acts in natures by nature, those in demonstration of the breaching method, and hyper additionally where it's an identity of grounds, hyper additional identity of relationship to itself that shows negative value nature progressions acts in natures, and Earth's a special difference through ourselves ignored. We could use positive and negative systems, identity difference, therefore identity system names, therefore systems other than its own, let alone tactical ulterior from its own, and self-value collusion / S with it, right where no one self-values it, and so that's their motive. And syntax part, screening the breaching method. There's mass names calling just to cover up how there is mass, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents that we don't have to. I'm not a lawyer. We don't have to be lawyers to discern this. And a lot of the things, they make types of lawyers and types of law, types of names of the people, the sciences. They are in a trap. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method with guilt. But that also requires us to discern where we can discern, how we can discern the breaching method is relative to where there is guilt. Everyone at once, including the branch of the government, including, all natures of time, all ages of their family members at the same time, and overt criminal enterprise by everyone. And the same thing. The difference of them next to them or conjunctions to them. This is a breaching method that rubs off, the sense and sensibilities, what a certain type of victim / hyper victim, tried to fake morality, integrity by acting it, leaving out the black people's whites of eyes, how nature teaches about morality, integrity, by showing us the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positives like peace / hyper criminally foreign influence. See, as this breaching method needs things like criminal foreign influences to stay blamed until that was and is increasingly true. Right as collusion / S. Right with all difference / S. They already had Black KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, collusion with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and where and how and why, really. People go back and forth, whether there's a case and that was up, and they're lying about and why and how really they were motivated. CBS has people that are involved in NBC and Fox News. Also, the family members and different natures of conjunctions to them. People next to with intelligence families and locations and systems next to them, including with Social Security, involved with all kinds of digital crimes and forensics people in Middletown and Weathersfield, the state judicial branch offices in conjunctions to that, like Route 3, that has a bunch of people at the corner of Elm Street in Rocky Hill and Weathersfield from years before that, who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles with predicate acts with facts in databases and wrongdoing. And this is communications, how they sought me out. These are also people faking what is said to hide what is actually. There's a communications racketeering worse than war crimes that no one self-values, right where they have self-value collusion / through subject treatments. For example, we were not supposed to entertain people pretending that anybody else was one of the known founders of America besides James Madison. See, but they have self-value collusion /S replacing how both the breaching method /S, that means a whole bunch of different layers of interest and agencies over the sense and sensibilities. No, I would use Jane Austen's phrase. Before we even get to the book, we have to get a reality. No, we agree about things. There are polling locations that are polling people and playing, oh, well, people said this, and this is what we think, and this is what the value of voting. In other words, people go fishing too. Because these agencies, these identities, these differences, the groups individually grouped and together, the branches of government, our countries A through Z. We have black people's whites devised to discern the why and how they were motivated to stay collusion /S with the predicate acts with facts method /S that countless of us, humanity, we know this is real. We know also we could discern some of the invisible but still discernible motivations of people and how it's manifest where people will jump into other people's conversations dishonestly to say whatever to get them to not to speak about predicate acts. On a mass scale, there are people that value the right to lie and needs to lie, used for where they don't use to conceal how they had collusion /S with use of location /S everywhere the species body stands, because relative to how they were child abused. You A through Z. How you guys got away with it. The interbranch has collusion /S with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes and scams and legal ones and pretend. In other words, with the FBI director Robert Luskin and multiple Connecticut courts, they have personally and professionally roles with the Leahy family 3 times with involved with what people. With interbranch offices, switching names, forging names, putting fake transcripts in databases, fake ties to kids. Also with the news, fake ties to these are ones with badges too. Psychiatry right through wars, they had delusions relative to here. And so in other words, how this was hidden so long right in our faces, in plain sight, that's also recorded too, how motivated to have self-value collusion with it, while there are use /S of that recorded too. It's also with people with UPS and shipping locations involved with the foreign and domestic military that were compromised before the World Trade Center attack, in it and since. And they know this is discernibly recorded, but it also is recorded in such a way that shows that names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, even next to body dumping spots, and one's years apart. And there were time use /S of the difference of the guilt of the killer, the names next to the body double spot, and the interbranch, and their prisons associated with them. Sandy Hook prisons has had collusion /S with databases. The relative also has collusion /S with use of it /S of it that can be used to discern. They have foreign and domestic Navy too. Involved a whole bunch of people involved with Venezuela too, with a former Mayor Gold and his daughter, and he has a son named Lee Gold, brought up in confessions. I don't know him, and his daughter faked things into databases and acted tied to it behind my back, and tried to make a fake exception preemptively in my face, like timing when I was going to be walking and using a corner of a building. There are connections between people who use the corners of building, timing where people are going to be standing, and then involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. As people that have roles with the World Trade Center attack, and people between campuses that are not even connected. Increasingly, people all along Two Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane, where it is conjunctive and not in the difference of that. While collusion slash like a Brian Bonin sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has rules with people from other countries and with a whole bunch of different countries and with his educators and with Wethersfield Police Department and multiple courts and people involved with body dumping spots and wire crime acts and methods. These are also people with WFSB that attach me to fake conversations and ties to themselves and to others. They have a whole bunch of people along Route 3 since I was a kid that have been collusions acting and put it tied to fake things put in databases. And they have roles with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first force, and roles with recorded use /s of the differences of the guilt of abuses of the kids of the leaders of the kids, or the abuses of other kids and adults. All ages and natures have been positions upon them multi-front at countries A through Z, relative to where and to how they pretend. That sophistication, relative to weapons, but look with that and that, in other words. But meanwhile, not one side had, nor has possession of even the syntax regarding what appears to be debatable and what's not, regarding what James Madison, our founders, declassified. They had to counter-extort people at key locations because there was, not just because, there was worse differentially with the guilt too. So if descriptions of it could be used to measure and maintain, everyone sensing, therefore, for a breaching method, that which had slavery even roles only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies. Neither of them wanted that. But if anyone spoke about those and the other subjects they forced to be apart, separate, and roles relative to exceptions. Exception nature used tactical ulterior from nature. So then increasingly shown by the breaching method, the names of the people, the sciences they have to value, faked exceptions, exception nature. Collusion /s being have been and you with use /s of it simultaneous to keep other things, others, or self. Blame for things that nature shows us. Nature shows us all those affronts on women with laws, the needs against boys and girls, all ages. When there's an affront on any human difference, it's an affront on all. And it is incapable of defending itself and affording to be, let alone to be protract, appreciated anyone's short words properly with convictions. So a certain type of victim /hyper victims that was child abused is now needing to speak about, use words like crimes with their roles with the law. But it is with and as people that cannot defend that without valuing and having value, self-value. Collusion /s with predicate acts with facts that nature demonstrates with. And the breaching method used to show people, like they already had opinions and syntax regarding the outcomes of cases. They also faked them with the news and the interbranch at the same time that switched names. On a mass scale, the really reason /s that they can't afford to overcome impositions like how there's only so many hours in a day, and they have streams of people coming into courts. That means they have streams of difference, lists of differences. In other words, on Facebook, after the principal child abuser was put in jail reportedly for obscure pictures at a shopping center, one of the shopping centers involved. A whole bunch of people involved with shopping centers and with foreign and domestic intelligence have had collusion /s inter social media being used to sense by the breaching method that use our agencies remotely as collusions with WFSB before and after the World Trade Center attack, recorded after it by how they faked conversations with me and me with others about the World Trade Center attack. And I'm one of the people that was an observer in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the attack, right before it. And then we came home. And it was on the news. It was and I came home to Connecticut from New York. And I had been in New York the night before it, next to the World Trade Center too. See, we have investigators. Oh, but the country already went to the war. We don't know what to do. In other words, that's not. They have our founders' communications replaced simultaneously. You guys already have, you guys already pretend we can't discern. You have the sustained subject treatments with sexual rights and things like that, and counters to it as collusion/S. Where and how they're putting faked and changed things in databases where there are databases as hyper additional collusion/S with the breaching methods use/S of databases, and hyper additionally from its use/S of the databases of the republic for which we stand, which is more probably demonstrably having been revealed to be led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible. And using pantheism, it is more probable that pantheism was a name revealed to teach about how and why. Anything that's an ism is about the invisible but still discernible, even if it's something that's made up, which nature's nature. It is itself the invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is itself, the invisible but still discernible. And those two volumes as value, they are only increasing value per where and how it nature's nature, and the only increasing value of that is bound distinctly in physics too this way. Many pray. Vaccines. But many pray also because there is now a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not a lawyer. This is more probable and demonstrable. How we should have our syntax to respond to this. That which had even northern colonies, southern colonies that were the possessions of other countries, totally different countries, totally different international companies, totally different manifest roles with that. Totally, and it gets sustained still then and now against and while helping too at the same time. All nations of help with Native American differences, names A through Z of tribes. That could only be, in other words, all group differences. This breaching method measures and maintains them only roles self-value with appreciation of names and of different/S through and as systems tactical terrier, syntax system tactical terrier from the one that is generating individual species bodies of individual bodies. And again, all group differences. Or it demonstrates when we are using system. It demonstrates when we were using systems tactical ulterior than its own, let alone while having been used remotely while self-valuing roles within that system's tactical ulterior from its own. That's the real reason people have self-valuing roles going into outer space, besides the logistical threats posed by technology and the elements of earth and of nature and of the sciences being and having been in the hands of a hyper-criminal insidiousness nature method, while as criminal insidiousness natures being and having been hyper-criminally foreign influenced / criminally foreign influence to keep the things like criminal foreign influence blamed for things that are should be blamed in the nature itself, and that our founders directed us to blame on hypercriminal foreign influences, even though they didn't use that phrase. We are distinct from the other species' bodies, and we are non-distinct from them simultaneously. And we are simultaneous with them. But simultaneously, it is generated by what is neither us nor them. There is a further distinct identity of scientific value here. Identity of relativity / hyperrelativity. No theory. See, this breaching method showed the names of the people, the sciences, encounters to them. It showed and shows them at the same exact time. They need to hide collusion / S. But relative to where and to how, they need to hide how nature was and is in demonstration / S of those things, of that thing / S. But no one has heard, allowed to be heard. No one has been allowed to be heard. No one has been allowed to hear anyone speak for integrity the way our founders communicated for it to be spoken for. We were not supposed to refer to any other person as a known founder besides James Madison. And see, they knew that they would replace and hide. How? The plural founders had to force everyone, and why the plural founders had to force everyone to help the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention, even though it was not allowed. Per lists of things. Oh, but this it shouldn't be allowed. Why do you think they voted on slavery? They had everyone leveraged against themselves as syntax, nature, therefore as physics. Everyone fought with each other, and even the countries that were involved with it. Then they would go to the meeting, the relativity of those internationally monitored meetings. The difference of guilt of them overt criminal enterprises, private ones. News, the difference of any type of communication, all location / S, maintained, blaming and having blamed other things, others, ourselves for what the breaching method knew nature would demonstrate, which is its roles. All those things against Native Americans, all those things against women, all those things against Black people's rights of eyes, communications by nature itself. All different subjects, but about the same thing, about that breaching method. They're about a human fact, human nature breaching method that was forged and is a method / S that uses effectively not just entire countries, not just every grouping of them, but every human species body of them, all humanity voicings. There are locations, areas, and states voicings, no matter where the human species body is, incapable of affording to have discern where and how nature leads our voice. And being it is nature shows us it is, and showed the ancients that and how it is functional, being hyper invisible itself, and it only increasing value, how it is distinctly hyper invisible as itself, from how it is the invisible but still discernible, again, as the parts of speech. For example, why and how we need more than one word for a verb is right where and how we could discern the body of the hyper invisible but still discernible to that one, showing us that we are distinct from the other species bodies, but also non-distinct from them. And we are simultaneous from them per its further body of value progression shown to us. That is not just hyper invisible, but still discernible. Invisible, but still discernible / hyper invisible, but still discernible, and is juxtaposed with physics. Alpha and omega, see alpha in the as in the root, as one of the root words of the word alphabet. And discern. Why and how? Mother. M stands for mother, the middle letter of the English language, the English alphabet. And mother is omega, but distinctly. So why it's two different words for a reason, but mother is omega in physics. But what alpha and omega is about is a species body, individual of individual bodies in nature's nature, generating all group differences. Otherwise, it shows us that we were, and or shows us the moment we will be using systems abridged from its own, which we have been and are shown to self-value collusion /s being and haven't been used as systems tactile from the only one that could properly make convictions with our syntax. See, these are all locations associated with the law, with the names of the people, the sciences. It's not the single number where everyone's guilty at the same time. Names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, news, and interbranch at the same time. Names next to body dumping spots and criminal enterprises associated, even when they're not involved with the cases. They increasingly are. And to screen even worse. Don't look past, don't underestimate what underlied. We'll have all those sick affronts on all those differences, every difference. Even changing what nature communicates with Black people's whites of eyes. There is a reason that, in other words, this is to maintain in the nature of debate. Oh, but that's political. Things aren't political. Our founders showed us that the breaching method has, it read what our founders declassified. It appreciated it. It measures and maintains self-value collusions, people pretending that Thomas Jefferson was a draft of our founder without a breaching method on top of him. They were child abused. That's the only thing they have is a shared culture together. And nature showed them that. Nature showed them when you guys were little kids. It showed you not to use correlation and or to self-value collusions with it, because it needs those hyper-additional collusions for more and more real motivations, right? Where no one wants those collusions /s. In other words, until those things were real. That's part of the reason we can. There are things still manifest that are proofs that are part of the proofs that a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise method, a group, but we're using a method, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the only people could operate the names of countries A through Z, to blame other things, others, or selves for what it caused, and to have proper counters to that too. More and more, everyone together locked simultaneously blaming other things, others, or selves for why and how more and more they could not and cannot afford to have people with anyone have their syntax appreciated, unabridged, or even not changed, or faked and hid, obfuscated, worse. So there's a quality of fact-driven nature that is criminal insidiousness nature. And nature itself, with using how it is distinctly itself from its identity of relationship to itself. And while it is an only increasing value at the same time, it is those three ways inseparable from the individual parts of each thing, from the group parts of it, and from the simultaneous, for how it is showing us to appreciate and to discern how it shows us answers, means how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, means out of nowhere here, evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere here, or that means forced away from here. Not as death, but as forced to special difference transfer. Earth's a special difference transferred to ourselves. As a negative identity of relationship to nature, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, which is identity's lesson here, our soul's course. and Romulus, Romulus and Remus. There are proofs that this is cipher to be deciphered too. Just like how and why there are self-guided collusion /s pretending others simultaneously, replacing the first parts of religious books too, like the Old Testament, where it says, at the beginning of it, it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. And that comes before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In Adam and Eve, the famous story of that. It doesn't say to defend that part. It says only to. It says only defend right here, the Old Testament. When people say, oh, I love the New Testament. That's good, but there are recorded uses of with the organized crimes, like and with people with the Social Security and databases with mental health and at triages with multiple agencies. They also leak when they do the crimes there. And they go the methods through the mail. There's a Leahy family that faked conversations with me. They never were at all anywhere. And they pretended at Hartford Hospital. They have a bunch of people with the Parks and Recreation involved with untimely deaths and sexual and medical offenders of kids. Collusion /s also with a little girl and their family member in their family involved with a bunch of people at Connecticut's District Court and New Britain Superior Court, involved personally and professionally, also with other courts and their family members in intimate ties before the World Trade Center attack. In it and since they had collusions with confessions tied to the Leahy family, involve all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slings, untimely deaths too, and things years apart. And they've been planting fake ties to me on my street, and they pretended I had ties to doctors as a kid, too, with the news. That faked conversations and ties to me and other kids to fake ties to doctors with news. Investigators never stopped being used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. These are also names with the state corrections offices and the judicial branch offices who have organized crimes with little kids and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids. Collusions, too, with the use of the difference of guilt with that, and would they have sensitivities based on what people say. Dishonest, that's recorded, too. The breaching method showed them how this is discernible. It showed the people of Facebook they need to hide their collusions with the British Superior Court and with the FBI Director Robert Luskin and other FBI directors and their subject treatments with cases, exception nature, and the value of, they make mistakes on purpose. As collusion /s, these are also people with Sandy Hook Prison have collusions with people named O'Brien and Collusion per them. Also, Whiting Forensics and a whole bunch of other people have collusions with them planting predicate acts on my street, intercities, and at campuses behind my back and try to make a fake exception in my face. In other words, I only saw Tim O'Brien like on campus like two times. In other words, I went away because they were planting evidences. These are people. Tim O'Brien wasn't even in my class. I thought I went away in the parking lot, or what is it called? Because the person that lived on the street. I think it's in other words, all kinds of. They have multiple police departments involved with him and Collusion, involved with all the other police forms and multiple courts, judges, prosecutors, and a victim's advocate involved putting fake things at the same time. Everyone lying about their motivations and screening all the other countries involved with those families and their roles with confessions manifest relative to how this breaching method used confessions before religious messengers were even born, before the church used confessions distinctly from the breaching method, but non-distinctly too. Because as the Quran and the Old Testament were written with consciousness that the differences of guilt between people attacking the religions with syntax, therefore physics, or the people defending them with syntax, therefore physics. The differences of their guilt would be self-value, while in defense of their uses of their identity. /S, where the scientists from off the campuses and the equivalents, the exceptions that the Republic also needed and valued. There are proofs. Because to be and stay being led by how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is itself also the invisible but still discernible. Again, the parts of speech of English grammar about the invisible but still discernible, / hyper invisible but still discernible. And this is what we are shown. This is what we long to see, to discern with sight, through blindness. What we long to discern is the extent of its identity, nature's body that we can discern, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, that variable part, / S, that variable part, in other words, rather. And I forget. So people, this is a too long video, but please, someone tell Elon Musk, because I tried to communicate with him. Then May Musk was trying to communicate. They couldn't fathom how, for example, all the media coverage of Elon Musk and of the FBI and Doge, they were all used to measure and maintain. For example, collusion / S with organized crimes, with people with the upskirt nature picture. After the principal child abuser was put in jail, even if that was, even if that was the people that put him in jail, his jail, and people with the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices haven't had recorded collusion / S with the people involved with that. And with other people with that jail, they had collusions with them at the crime scenes involved. I noticed. Because they also made confessions relative. Because they also made confessions already the breaching method. And the breaching method used as such. It used already names on all sides of cases, interstates, and the interbranch and intelligence tied to them, they're shared. Their families are directed not to speak about things, but they communicate them because they exploit the location / S the way the breaching method would, the way they have roles with it next to campuses. All along Route 3 are people who have collusion / S next to colleges and universities, intercities, and with the state judicial branch offices, which is conjunctive to Route 3. And in other words, people increasingly since I was a kid that I never had classes with have been acting tied to people putting put me in fake conversations with them. And they had time collusions of the World Trade Center attack. So Mendez police forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded with others that had predicate acts on my street when I was a little kid and since before I was born. They had collusions with it. As ones that were involved with Saudi attackers before and after the World Trade Center attack, forced to collusions with Wethersfield police. And per worse, that keeps everyone speaking through others forced, where they fake and change what's actually recorded, hide what came first, and what was actually being communicated. People are pretending they don't realize that. They're showing they need to do that, where they're speaking about crimes, where how those courts have and have had collusion / S with tactically juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crimes, but also non-distinct and relative to that one that we don't have to be lawyers to discern. I'm not a lawyer, but that predicate acts and facts method relative to our black people's rights of eyes and those even of the shark. Hark, who disbelieves? Get them on paper, please.